Hey guys, it's Sunday. Let's make a video about football that isn't talking about how much the Dallas Cowboys still suck and how they did nothing in the... Anyway, enough about that. The Philadelphia Eagles. As you can tell from the title, I'm going to make a case that the Philadelphia Eagles' two Super Bowl wins are the two greatest collective Super Bowl wins from any NFL team ever that has won at least two Super Bowls. Now, when I got to thinking about this today, number one, I looked at a list of Super Bowl winners, but I specifically remember talking with someone in a live stream some months ago. We were talking about the Seattle Seahawks, and he was talking about the Malcolm Butler interception that cost the Seattle Seahawks Super Bowl because their stupid coach doesn't know how to run the ball from the goal line, and Marshawn should have just taken it. But anyway, um, and I remember talking to him about it during one of my live shows and saying, like, I was like, yeah, it sucks and all, but man, you won the Super Bowl before that. So you at least have that to, to rest on. Like that Malcolm Butler interception would have been 10 times worse if Seattle hadn't just won the previous Super Bowl against the Peyton Manning Broncos. And that's when this person countered me with, he goes, yeah, but you know, it would have been so much more historic if the Seattle Seahawks were known as the team that beat Peyton Manning and Tom Brady in back-to-back Super Bowls. And I was like, my God, I never thought of it like that. And that just like, wow. I'm like, that would have been arguably like the two best back-to-back Super Bowl wins for a team ever. But it didn't happen, obviously, because, like I said, Pete Carroll's an idiot that doesn't know how to give Marshawn the ball when they're at it's like the 3 foot line. Anyway, 3 foot line, 1 yard line. Anyway, so I want to make the case today that the Eagles, arguably, of any team that has won at least two Super Bowls, and like I said, I looked at the list of Super Bowl winners, have the two most impressive Super Bowl wins ever combined. Um, there may be Super Bowls that you look at and you say like, oh, that was more impactful for the whole merger and creation of the NFL with like a game like the Jets facing the Colts, with Broadway Joe Namath coming in, and I obviously wasn't alive during that, but you hear people say like, oh, no one gave Broadway Joe a chance, and he came in and showed everyone what's going on, and the AFL and the NFL should be merged, and then it was merged a year or two after that. But anyway, games like that obviously have much more of a significance in creating the league itself as to what you see today. But when looking through the list of Super Bowl winners, it's not so much look at the winners, but look at the losers. And would you say those losers of the Super Bowl would be more on the list of all-time greats, or a list of just, yeah, they were kind of just there, or they were a perennial punching bag? Like perennial punching bags, I'll say, like are teams like the Buffalo Bills. Their four Super Bowl runs, they're going to be known more historically as the people that just couldn't get over the hump. They were just not about that next level life. You could say the same thing for like the 1980s, obviously not the final 2 years of John Elway's career, but the 1980s, early 1990s Denver Broncos. They got blown out three different times in a Super Bowl. So, they're like, you don't look at them as a loser, but like, oh, that was an elite John Elway Broncos team. Like, no, you weren't saying that until they won two Super Bowls, like I said, at the very final two seasons of John Elway's career. And again, look at all the losers. Like look at the two Super Bowl wins, and we'll stick with just recent years here, so because most of you aren't going to know much beyond what happened in the 1990s. But you look at a team like a Baltimore Ravens. In 2000, they beat a New York Giants team that I can guarantee you probably half of you out there don't even know who the quarterback of the team was. Um, even the Patriots. The Patriots' first Super Bowl win, okay, greatest show on turf, the St. Louis Rams, then St. Louis Rams. Okay, that's pretty respectable, especially for Brady's first Super Bowl. Yeah, that's pretty respectable. But then they beat teams like the McNabb-led Eagles team and T.O. and McNabb throwing up in the huddle and stuff like that. beating the Jake Delhomme Carolina Panthers. Like, would you look at that Eagles or Panthers team as any sort of like all-time great? Or like that's a huge opponent they beat in that Super Bowl. And then I'm just thinking of other teams like even like this like the San Francisco 49ers. Like they beat up the Boomer Esiason Bengals. Again, not an all-time great. They beat up at least one time the Broncos, like I mentioned before, and back when John Elway was getting his face punched every year when he made it to a Super Bowl 3 times that he got. Anyway, what I'm getting at here is now look at the Eagles. The Eagles' first Super Bowl win was against the previous generation's GOAT in Tom Brady, and they beat him with a backup quarterback. So you look at just this year's Eagles team, they beat the current generation. I mean, I don't think it's arguable. In Patrick Mahomes is this current generation's GOAT, or I guess you can't say current generation's GOAT because that's kind of contradictory if you have a GOAT in the previous generation. Anyways, the best quarterback in the league right now, many would agree, is Patrick Mahomes, and the Eagles beat him. But not only did they beat him, they made him look terrible. So what I'm getting at is, can you point to any other NFL team and say, wow, look at the teams they beat? Like, again, like I said with the Baltimore Ravens, they beat the Giants team with a quarterback that probably half of you don't remember unless you're a Giants fan. And then they beat Colin Kaepernick one year when he got hot with the 49ers. Like, would you say that 49ers or Giants team is like ever going to be remembered as an all-time great? Where people are going to look back in history and say, like, yeah, the Kansas City Chiefs in the late 20 teens and early 2020s was one of the greatest football teams of all time. And people are obviously going to say that the New England Patriots of the 15-ish years before that were one of the greatest, if not the greatest football team of all time. And the Eagles beat both of them. And honestly, look down the list again. Don't look so much at the winners. Look at the losers. And would you say that team is, that was actually an all-time great team that they beat, or even just a team that was like, something to reckon with for years? Because the only other team that I look at that says that's even comparable to the 2 Super Bowl wins that the Eagles have is the New York Giants with Eli Manning. And my God, I want to throw up just saying that. Of all the teams, and look at the list for yourself, who has 2 more important wins against an opponent that you could say is an all-time great other than the Giants and the Eagles? Like, I seriously think those are the only 2 teams of teams that won at least 2 Super Bowls that you can point to and say, yeah, they beat an all-time great twice. Because beating Peyton Manning, beating Tom Brady, God, how can I misspeak? Oh my gosh, and say Peyton Manning instead of Tom Brady. Beating Tom Brady on a season where he's having an undefeated run, an MVP season for Tom Brady, and you beat him in the Super Bowl, and then 4 seasons later you beat him again. That's pretty impressive. So, I now leave it up to you guys. Or just make a different team. If you say, no, actually the wins that this Super Bowl team had against this one and that one, like, again, like, you look at the list of the losers and there's just so many teams. It was just a team that got there. It was just a team that got there. Like the 49ers beating the Chargers. The Chargers were just a team that got there. Like, it's no disrespect to them. They're obviously the best team in their conference and they got there on their own laurels and whatnot. But it's not something where everyone's going to be like, oh, that 1980s Charger was an all-time great. No one says that. Like, don't kid yourself. Or the 1980s, early 90s Chargers, that Junior Seau led team. But anyway, just something I thought about, and I was like, man, do the Eagles have the 2 biggest? It's something I haven't heard anyone really talk about. Like, is the Eagles' 2 Super Bowl wins the greatest 2 Super Bowl wins comparative to any other team that has won at least 2 Super Bowls? Anyways, think about that. And then let's go back to thinking about how much the Dallas Cowboys suck and they did nothing this offseason. They're all in. Have a good day. That is all.